Today we are going to be discussing Naskh. We indicated this last week when we discussed Mr. John Burton and his comments regarding the Quran. We said that the Prophet ﷺ had actually forgotten certain sections of the Quran, and that Muslims try to cover up this idea by inventing the concept of Naskh. So we need to actually get into the concept of Naskh to be able to respond to that allegation and criticism of Islam. So loosely translated, Naskh would be abrogation. Basically, when you repeal a law, you change an earlier law for a later law. Right? Many ulama have given various definitions for it. One of the most common definitions is the following, that it is a raf'u hukmin, or rather, raf'u hukmi dalilin shar'iyyin mutaqaddimin, to lift the ruling of a previous Islamic evidence. Mutaqaddim means previous, dalil shar'i, Islamic evidence. Right? So to lift the ruling of a previous Islamic evidence, aw lafdhihi, sometimes even the text as well, the very wording is lifted and removed. بحكم دليل شرعي متأخر, and replace it. So replace is not mentioned over there, just the term be, with, right, to lift it and replace it with حكم دليل شرعي متأخر, the ruling of an Islamic evidence متأخر that comes later. So to replace the former with the later. Sometimes we are replacing a former ruling with a later ruling. Sometimes we are replacing a former text with a later text. Right? There's more detail with regards to that. I haven't given all the logical possibilities. It is just to open up your mind to the idea. I will add more possibilities in the next lesson, inshallah. Either way, what are some evidences as to abrogation? That the fact that there is abrogation in the Quran and there is abrogation in the Hadith. So in the Quran itself, we have the following verse, Surah Baqarah, verse 106, where Allah says, and we had a look at this verse last week, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما ننسخ من آية, we do not abrogate any verse, أو ننسها, or cause it to be forgotten, except that.
Noah, just come here.
Okay, somebody sound is on over there. نأتي بخير منها, we bring something, except that we bring something better than it, أو مثلها, or at least they're very equal. ألم تعلم, do you not know, أن الله على كل شيء قدير, that Allah has power over all things, Allah is competent over all things. Right? There is another ayah in the Quran where a suggestion is actually made by Arabs that we are unhappy with this particular ruling. Why can't you change it for us? Why can't you replace this verse with another verse? And then the Prophet ﷺ responds that he does not have the power to replace verses. He can only replace that which Allah commands him to replace. Now that verse will not be discussed today. I'm just indicating to it. Next week, inshallah, we'll have a look at that. So this lesson is going to go at least over 2 to 3 lessons, depending upon how much detail we are going to be doing, and Allah knows best. Please do ensure that your sound is off. Oh, okay. I see I'm able to mute it, so no problem. Then we have Surah Nahl, verse 101. Another verse that indicates the Naskh. Allah says, وَإِذَا بَدَّلْنَا آيَةً مَكَانَ آيَةٍ, and when we substitute a verse in place of another. So who's doing it? Allah is doing it. That na is referring to Allah. And you must have learned in the other classes that it is commonly known as the royal plural. Allah refers to himself in the plural, though Allah is one. Right? So when we change one verse for another, we substitute one verse for another, we are the ones that do that. And Wallahu a'lamu bima yunazzil, and Allah is most knowing of what He sends down. Nobody knows what Allah has revealed and what Allah has not revealed better than Allah. Qalu, what do they respond? What do they say? They say to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Innama anta muftirun, right? Muftarin, right? Iftara, yaftari, and then it becomes muftarin. It's like qadi, madi, rami. If you read it without the al, you read it muftarin, qadin, madin, ramin. Only when you add the al, then the ya comes back. So innama anna muftari, muftarin, right? You are but a fabricator. You are but an inventor of lies. But Allah's response is, بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Rather, the bulk of them, they do not know. They speak about things that they do not know, and then they make these false claims. Had they been people of knowledge, they would have known that the Quran is coming from Allah, and they would have known that Allah reserves the right as the monarch and the creator and the author of the speech to replace some sections of the speech with other sections for certain divine wisdoms, some of which we will be discussing in the next few lessons, inshallah. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she also gives us examples in hadith. So those are two ayahs I've given. There are more verses, some that I've just indicated to. Then there's a hadith that indicate to this, and there are numerous ones. Now, before I continue, I need you to know that in Islam, there are certain people that are your maharim. They are unmarriageable kin. Unmarriageable kin. And there are three categories. One is blood relations. So if you're a male, for example, then it would be your mother, your sister, your daughter, etc. Then you also have relations due to marriage, where people become permanently haram to you. So if you marry a lady, for example, then her mother, your mother-in-law, becomes permanently haram to you. Even if your wife were to pass away or you divorce her, you still have the right to go visit your mother-in-law and even be private with her. You still have the right to take her on Hajj as well. And Allah knows best, because she becomes permanently haram to you, so she becomes mahram. The same with your stepdaughter, when the marriage to the mother was consummated. When the marriage to the mother was consummated, then your stepdaughter becomes your permanent mahram. So that is number two. Then number three is fosterage. When a lady fosters a child, she basically breastfeeds a child. So the Islamic ruling currently is that it needs to be 5 complete breastfeedings. 5 complete breastfeedings. What is a complete breastfeeding? A complete breastfeeding is where a baby is allowed to drink until it reaches the point that it no longer wants to drink. So instead of the mother taking the baby off the breast, the baby drank until the baby no longer wanted to drink and it stopped drinking. Right? So 5 complete breastfeedings like that. And the hadith is in Bukhari that indicates to that. Right? If this is done, where a lady has breastfed an infant like that, an infant under the age of 2 years, then she becomes the foster mother of that child, and that child becomes her foster child. So this is what is the ruling now. Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, the wife of the Prophet of Allah, she indicates to us in Sahih Muslim that this wasn't always like this. It wasn't always 5 breastfeedings. It actually used to be 10 breastfeedings. So she says, part and parcel of what was revealed of the Quran was the 10 known breastfeedings. So that known, that means complete breastfeedings, would render a person a mahram. But then it was abrogated with 5 known breastfeedings. Right? So it used to be 10, and then it became 5. But she's not telling us that the 10 breastfeedings is in the hadith. Now she says the 10 breastfeedings was part and parcel of what was revealed of the Quran. So it used to be part and parcel of the Quran. There was a verse that said that you had to give 10 breastfeedings. And then that verse was abrogated by a hadith that says only 5 known breastfeedings instead of 10. And then the actual words were removed from the Quran. But this happened just prior to the Prophet ﷺ passing away. So he passed away soon after that. And still some Sahaba, who the news of it having been abrogated, it had not reached them as yet, they were still reciting it as part and parcel of the Quran. So this is why we see her saying, soon thereafter, the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, passed away while it was still being recited as Quran. Right? So Imam Nawawi actually tells us, I made a bit of a mistake here with the links. Where is it? There is it. So Imam Nawawi actually tells us this was because the news that it was abrogated had not yet reached them due to it having happened recently. Right? So it just very recently the Quran was revealed or rather hadith was revealed abrogating the 10 breastfeedings. And then the Prophet had passed away, and the news of it had not reached all of the Sahaba. So they were still reciting it as part of the Quran. Later, when news of its abrogation reached them, they refrained from its recital, and they reached consensus. There was ijma' that it should no longer be recited. So there was ijma' that this is no longer part and parcel of the Quran, and Allah knows best. There appears to be a question. Right, here's the question. If you breastfeed a baby only once, is the child your foster child too? So the correct answer over here is that scholars differ. So the Shafi madhab says breastfeeding a baby only once will not render that child your foster child. And they base it upon a hadith such as what I have just quoted. So you'll clearly see in that hadith of Aisha, she says it used to be 10, then it was reduced to 5. Right? And there's other hadith that indicates it's 5. So the Shafi madhab acts upon that. The Hanafi madhab says there's an ayah in the Quran where Allah says, وَأُمَّهَاتُكُمُ اللَّاتِي أَرْضَعْنَكُمْ, and your mothers that breastfed you. Right? And that ayah indicates that your foster mother is also your mahram. But the ayah doesn't give an amount of breastfeeding. Right? So it suggests that even one breastfeeding is sufficient to render somebody your foster mother. So the Hanafi madhab acts upon that. Right? They don't deny the hadith, but they feel that the hadith doesn't have the power to abrogate what is mentioned over there. Or the hadith doesn't have the power to make takhsis umum al-Quran. Right? And this is a principle you will learn in Usul al-Fiqh. It doesn't have the power to delimit the generality of a Quranic statement. So that's the Hanafi opinion. The bulk of the ulama have, however, gone a different way. And they say what that ayah means is it means that whosoever has breastfed you 5 times, that person is your foster mother. And Allah knows best. Right? So there's a difference between the madhahib. The Shafi madhab says like this, and the Hanafi madhab says like that. So if you're Hanafi, then the correct answer is that yes, if you breastfeed the child only once, then you become the foster mother of the child, and the child becomes your foster child. Right? I hope that is understood. If there's any other further questions, no problem with you asking that, and Allah knows best. Then also, another statement of Aisha that indicates to abrogation. She indicates to us that it was the habit of the Arabs. Their favorite pastime was whining women. And had Allah abrogated these things right from the beginning, probably many people would not have embraced Islam, or probably many people would not have desisted from zina and from the drinking of khamr, and Allah knows best. One of our hadith that indicates that is the following one. So Aisha says, verily the first verses to be revealed were from the shorter chapters at the end of the Quran, basically Juz Amma. And so Juz Amma, the surahs in Juz Amma, those were the surahs, the bulk of them to have been revealed first. In them is mentioned paradise in hellfire. So the focus over there is more that one day you will die. And after you have died, life will not entirely end, rather you will be resurrected into the year after. Then there will be Qiyamah. Then there will be Hisab. And then eventually you'll go either to Jannah or Jahannam. So the first surahs to be revealed, the first ayat to be revealed was dealing with Iman, was building Iman. So until people were firmly established upon Islam, and then only verses of lawful and unlawful were revealed. So only afterwards came halal and haram. The focus first was Iman, and afterwards the focus was halal and haram. There's something you can learn from that. You can learn from that first you must get buy-in. Right? If you're the owner of a company, you're the manager, first get buy-in. After you get buy-in, then you can start pushing regulations. But if you push regulations right from the beginning and there's no buy-in, probably people are not going to be listening to you. People are going to be disobeying you. So first, ensure buy-in. Anyway, that's a secondary point. We continue. So she goes further and she says, if the first verse to be revealed was do not drink wine, they would have said, we will never stop drinking wine. And if the first verse to be revealed was do not commit adultery, they would have said, we will never stop committing adultery. Now, this hadith, it is not a clear indication to naskh, because nothing was abrogated in this hadith that was said in the beginning. She is just indicating that in the beginning, Allah's focus was iman. And later on, Allah started moving in the direction of law. You understand? Allah's focus went in that direction. Now, what do we understand from this? We understand that Allah had a graded approach with regard to the Muslims. Allah first created a certain capacity, a certain ability, and then Allah took them to the next steps. You understand? And this is actually exactly how naskh works. Naskh she refers to the drinking of khamr. Later on, we will learn that eventually when Allah commanded that people should not drink khamr, Allah prohibited the drinking of khamr, even that was done gradually. So initially, Allah was allowing them to drink. Allah wasn't saying that it is haram to drink. But then eventually, Allah started saying, you must avoid drinking. But Allah didn't do that just like that. No. First, Allah said, "La taqrabu salata wa antum sukara." Do not come near salah while drunk. So first, there was no mention of khamr. Then afterwards, there was mention, okay, you're allowed to drink, but do not perform salah while drunk. And then eventually khamr was in its entirety abrogated, and Allah knows best. Either way, though this hadith doesn't directly speak of naskh, it has an indication to that, so it is suitable to be quoted, and Allah knows best. We also have the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that comes in Sahih Muslim, where he said, I used to prohibit you from the visitation of graves, so now visit them. I used to prohibit you from the visitation of graves, so now visit them. So it's indicating to you that the ruling before was that it is haram to visit graves. And now it is halal to visit graves. So it went from haram to halal. That is the very essence of naskh. Swapping one ruling for the other. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned one of the benefits, it comes in Tirmidhi, of visiting graves. And he says, because it reminds you of the akhirah. It reminds you of the akhirah. Now you're going to have to ask yourself, why did the Prophet of Allah prohibit them from visiting graves in the beginning? So one of the probable reasons for that is that there were people that were worshipping graves. There were people that were engaged in ancestor worship. And so the Prophet ﷺ wanted to first create a separation from those practices and bring people on full iman, where they would now be safe against shirk, inshallah. And then in that condition, now it's fine. Now you can go visit the graves. Because now, inshallah, you will not fall into the sin of shirk. And now the benefits of visiting graves, only that now stands clear, and Allah knows best. Right, so there's another question. Let's see. In which verses were they entirely abrogated, wine and adultery? Don't worry, we're going to be discussing it, I think, next week, inshallah. Right? Like, for example, with regards to zina, you'll have the ayah, La taqrabu zina innahu kana fahisha wa sa'a sabila. Right? And the khamr verses, I think, is innal khamra wal maisira, and so forth. But the exact references you will receive next week. Right? Where exactly were they entirely abrogated? It's coming next week, inshallah. Right. So the grave issue, I think it is understood. Once again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask it. And I like the way it is being done at this moment in time. You're just typing it in. So whenever there's an opportunity, then I will answer your questions, and Allah knows best. Here's another set of verses that is very interesting. First and foremost, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Islam believes in the concept of insan kamil. Islam believes in the concept of the perfect human. The perfect human. And the fact that it is an attainable state. Right? Yes, it was primarily Anbiya that attained to the state of insan kamil. But the state is possible. And when you attain to the state of insan kamil, then you get certain powers, almost like superhuman powers. And Allah indicates to it in these verses. Right, the Arabic of which is the following: Ya ayyuhan nabi, harradil mu'minina ala al-qital. Iyyakum minkum 20 sabiruna yaghlibu 200 wa iyyakum minkum 100 yaghlibu 1000 min alladhina kafaru bi'annahum qawmun la yafqahun. Al-ana khaffafa Allahu 'ankum wa 'alima anna fikum dha'fa. فَإِيَّكُمْ مِئَةٌ صَابِرَةٌ يَغْلِبُوا مِئَتَيْنِ وَإِيَّكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أَلْفٌ يَغْلِبُوا أَلْفَيْنِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Right, so the English of that is Surah Al-Anfal verses 65 to 66. If they are among you 20 that are steadfast, they will overcome 200. If they are among you 20 steadfast, they will overcome 200. So what did Allah just tell you? Allah just told you that if you are a true believer, aka Insan Kamil, if you have become Insan Kamil, the perfect human, you will gain the superpower of having the ability to overcome 10 times your number. Right? One human will be able to overcome 10. Right? So it's 20 and 200. Right? What is the ratio? 1 to 10. And if they are among you 100 steadfast, they will overcome 1,000, same ratio. Of those who have disbelieved, because they are a people who do not understand. So people who don't have understanding, they are weak. And people who don't have understanding of reality, they are weak. And the people that have a full understanding of reality, they have this maximum power. And in the state of maximum power, they can overpower 10 of those of the previous category. So that was the ruling in the beginning of Islam. And the indication was strive to attain to the stage. Right? Then Allah lightened the law. And Allah now says, now Allah is lightened for you. And He knows that among you is weakness. So if there is among you 100 steadfast, they will overcome 200. What is the ratio now? Now the ratio is 1 to 2. So in the beginning, Allah made it 1 to 10. If you can attain to the state, it's 1 to 10. Right? But if there's weakness in you, but you are at least a Muslim, or at least a believer, then one Muslim is the equivalent of 2 kuffar. That is how it is supposed to be. That is the minimum conviction that you're supposed to have. And that ratio continues. And if they are among you 1,000, they will overcome 2,000 by the permission of Allah. And Allah is with those who are steadfast. So over there, Allah indicated there are people who do not understand. So one of the things that gives you that added power is that you are a people that understand. Then Allah has used the term steadfast more than once. So that is another variable that assists you into becoming the Insan Kamil, that assists you into becoming this more powerful person. And the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated this himself. It is narrated in the hadith that a wrestler that was known all over Arabia, that had fought many wrestling matches and he had never lost. He came and he approached the Prophet of Allah and he said to the Prophet of Allah, I'm interested in Islam, but I will only embrace Islam if you are able to beat me in a wrestling match. And he had hardly completed his words, but that the Prophet ﷺ stood up, grabbed him and threw him to the ground and pinned him down, and he was unable to escape. Was the Prophet ﷺ known to have studied wrestling or any martial art? And the answer is no. You understand? So how was he able to overpower this particular individual? So Allah has indicated to that. Your true potential is that one of you is the like in power of 10 of them. But if you have not attained to your true potential, then at least it should be 1 as to 2, and Allah knows best. And this is all to do with inner state and not physical condition. And obviously, if your physical condition improves, then this power would increase to even more, inshallah, and Allah knows best. Either way, the concept of Naskh is shown once again. It went from a ratio of 1 to 10 to a ratio of 1 to 2. And Allah knows best. Right. What are the limitations of abrogation? So what in Islam is open to abrogation and what in Islam is not open to abrogation? So the ulama tell us, the ulama of grammar already, they tell us, there are 2 types of sentences in the Arabic language. So the one is known as a jumla khabariyya, and the other one is known as a jumla insha'iyya. So what is a jumla khabariyya? A jumla khabariyya is where we have some information being given. Right? You are being told that, for example, you are being told Ibrahim is fat or Ibrahim is not fat. Right? There's some type of a khabr. Right? There's some type of a idafa, some type of an attribution being made. And the very nature of a jumla khabariya is, as the ulama tell us, that it has ihtimal as-sidq or ihtimal al-kadhib. There's a possibility it is the truth, or there's a possibility that it is a lie. Right? So if I say Ibrahim is fat, and then you have you have the opportunity to look at Ibrahim and consider him now, you would be able to say that yes, he is fat. Or you'd be able to say, no, he is not fat. So in a jumla khabariya, there's a potential of a yes, and there's a potential of a no. Then you have a jumla insha'iyya. And a jumla insha'iyya is ma la yahtamilu as-sidqa wal kadhib. It's where there is no possibility of it being the truth, and there's no possibility of it being a lie. An example of that is like an amr or like a nahi. So an amr would be, for example, kum, stand. And a nahi, a prohibition, would be, for example, la taqum, do not stand. So you cannot tell me after I've said kum, that's a lie. You can't tell me that. After I've told you la taqum, you cannot tell me that's a lie. No. Because it has no potential of being the truth or being a lie. I'm asking you to do a thing. I'm asking you to avoid the doing of a thing. In such statements, there is no possibility of truth and a lie. So in Islam, automatically, Naskh will never occur to khabar. Naskh will never occur to khabar. Naskh only occurs to insha. And thus here automatically becomes a very interesting means to judge whether a religion is on truth or whether it is on batil. Because if a religion is on batil and there's naskh of khabar, something you told me, you now tell me differently. So that means what you said before, you are saying a different thing about what you said before. So that means either you lied yesterday or you lied today. Because for it to be abrogation, you have to say exactly the opposite. Right? So you either lied yesterday or you lied today. That is the problem with the jumla khabariya, when you start saying something different. And we find this in Christianity. We find in the Old Testament that God is saying, your God is one God, and he's a jealous God. If my wife were to say to me, I am one wife and I'm a jealous wife, will she ever allow me to take a second wife after she has said such a thing? Obviously not. But in the Old Testament, we have God saying, I am your God, I am one God, and I'm a jealous God. But then they make the claim that in the New Testament, God says that he is three. So what happened from the Old Testament to the New Testament? What happened? Right? Yes, I do understand Christians actually have an argument that it's actually 3 in 1. It's triune. You understand? So whatever Moses said about being one, they're still saying the same thing. Right? But they're going to have to admit that Moses wasn't speaking anything about triune. He wasn't speaking at any time about 3 in 1. You are the ones that have started 3 in 1. Moses was clearly only speaking about one God. Right? Either way, the point is proven that in a khabar, you can't say something different. You understand? And especially when you're dealing about Allah. Because Allah is the only constant in existence. Everything is dynamic. Right? Everything else is dynamic. Everything else can change. Right? So over there, we could possibly have some type of a naskh. But you can't have regarding Allah. Allah is the only thing that stays the same. And Allah knows best. So it always has to do with insha. It always has to do with do this, and afterwards, okay, you don't need to do that any longer. Right? And then obviously there would be wisdoms as to why I told you to do this. And then there would be wisdoms as to why I told you you no longer need to do that. And those wisdoms will be exposed. In the hadith of Aisha, one of the reasons I quoted that hadith, though it doesn't directly speak to naskh, is I indicated that Allah was wise in how he introduced laws. In fact, initially, Allah avoided laws in its entirety. And then afterwards, when Allah started introducing laws, Allah introduced it in a gradual and graded fashion so that people would be able to bear it and it wouldn't prove too much to them. If you were to just think for a moment, right, there's many considerations, right, on the issue of wine and women. If I were to just give you another one quickly, if you were to just think for a moment, their pastime was wine and women, right? So now Allah is going to tell them haram. If Allah tells them that both are haram, probably very few people will become Muslim. And the people that are Muslim, probably very few would practice on it. So what is the wiser thing? To make haram instantly. And what is the wiser thing to gradually make haram? So the answer there would be zina. Zina is the thing. It's wisest to instantly render it haram. And that is exactly what Allah did. And what is the thing that we gradually make haram? Khamr. So one was made haram, the other one was left. So they got used to that. When they got used to that, then they were told, it's fine, you can continue drinking, just don't drink when it is time for salah. And then eventually even that was abrogated and they were no longer allowed to consume alcohol at all. And Allah knows best. More on that later, inshallah. The major point over here is Jumla Khabariya, Jumla Insha'iyya. Khabar, nas cannot occur to khabar, but nas can occur to insha. It cannot occur to the Jumla Khabariya, it can occur to the Jumla Insha'iyya, and Allah knows best. So some quotations, inshallah. I'm giving you the Arabic. Ibn al-Jawzi, he says in his book Naskh al-Quran, page 15, the chapter is Babu Ithbat Anna fil Qur'ani Mansukhan. The chapter on confirming that the Quran has abrogated verses. So he says, in Aqada Ijma'ul Ulama'i, a consensus has been reached amongst the scholars ala hadha, on this point, meaning the point that the Quran has abrogated verses. Illa annahu qad shadda, except that there is a loner view that is contradicting the view of, or rather the consensus of scholars. It's a loner view of a person man la yultafat ilayhi, that shouldn't be given any attention. فحكى أبو جعفر النحاس, so Abu Ja'far al-Nahas, he narrates أن قوما, that some people, they don't even tell you who, قالوا, said, ليس في القرآن ناسخ ولا منسوخ. There is no abrogating verse in the Quran, no nasikh, nor is there any mansukh, abrogated verse in the Quran. And then Ibn al-Jawzi ends by saying, وَهَؤُلَاءِ خَالَفُوا نَصَّ الْكِتَابِ, and these people go contrary to clear-cut verses of the Quran. Nas. Nas means clear-cut verse. When you speak of clarity of a statement, you use three words. You say nas, you say lahir, and you say mujmal. Nas is when the meaning is unequivocal, unambivalent. Then you say nas. Right? If a word has more than one meaning, but one of the meanings is more probable, then you will call it zahir. If a word has more than one meaning and you can't figure out what is the probable meaning, you will say mujmal. So it's nas, zahir, and mujmal. Notice that he's saying nas. وَهَؤُلَاءِ خَالَفُوا نَصَّ الْقُرْآنِ. These people are going contrary to clear-cut, unambiguous, unambivalent verses of the Quran. وَإِجْمَاعَ الْأُمَّةِ, and they are contradicting the consensus of the entire ummah. So their view is not given any attention. It should be totally disregarded. It does not count. قال الإمام الطبري. Imam Tabri says, that great mufassir of the Quran, when it comes to naskh, لا يكون ذلك إلا في الأمر والنهي. Then it doesn't occur except to commands and prohibitions. So what did we learn? We learned that commands and prohibitions, that is insha. And insha has no potential of being the truth or a lie. So if I today say qul, and then tomorrow I say la taqul, you can't tell me either you're lying today or you lied yesterday. Same if I reverse it. If yesterday I said la taqul, and today I say qul, you can't tell me you either lied yesterday or you lied today, because it doesn't have the potential of being a lie or the truth. So that is in Amr and Nahi, which the grammarians have called insha. Right? As for the Jumla Khabariya, listen to what he says. فأما الأخبار, as for khabars, فلا يكون فيها ناسخ ولا منسوخ. In that, there is no abrogator, nor is there the abrogated. Right? And Allah knows best. So the principle is coming over and over again. Ibn Abdul Barr, that great Maliki scholar, he tells us, الناسخ والمنسوخ إنما يكونان في الأوامر والنواهي. Abrogating verses and abrogated verses, they only occur to commands and prohibitions. من الكتاب والسنة, in the Quran and in the Hadith. وأما في الخبر, as for any jumla khabariyah, عن الله عز وجل, from Allah, exalted and great is He, أو عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, or from the messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, فلا يجوز النسخ في الأخبار البتة. It is not permitted, it is not possible. Right? So jazia, juzia has both those meanings. It both means to be permissible and it also means to be possible. If I had to focus only on one, I would probably say it's not possible. فلا يجوز النسخ, it is not possible for abrogation في الأخبار to happen regarding information البتة at all, بحال, under any circumstances. And in the circumstances, it is not possible for it to be like that. Because then we're going to have to say that either the previous statement is the truth or the later statement is the truth. Which would mean that either Allah didn't know in the past or Allah outright lied. You understand? And that cannot ever apply to Allah, and it cannot ever apply to the Rasul of Allah with regards to wahi. And Allah knows best. Right. How do you identify abrogation? Oh, I see my time is up. It's 10:32. Let me see. Oh, no, it only ends at 10:35. We have 3 minutes more. So we can continue. How do you identify whether verses have been abrogated or not? Right. So this is again a bit of an introduction. Next week we'll go into it a little bit more detail, inshallah. So number one, there must be clear textual evidence that points to abrogation. So for example, the ahadith that were mentioned. Right? So I can't just say, I feel that this verse was abrogated. I feel that this verse no longer applies. I cannot say that. Right? There must be clear-cut textual evidence, and Allah knows best. Okay, Mullah Zakaria say it's fine. I can just quickly finish the points. Jazakumullah khairan, Mullah Zakaria. So there must be clear-cut textual evidence pointing to abrogation, such as with the traditions that were mentioned before. Those ahadith is telling us that there were verses that were abrogated, such as the hadith of Aisha al-Anha. The second is there must be consensus of the ummah, ijma', that a particular ruling was abrogated. And here we're basing that on the law that it isn't possible for the entire ummah to fall in dalalah. It isn't possible for the entire ummah to fall in dalalah. Numerous ahadith indicate that even if the bulk of the ummah falls in dalalah, there will always be a small group that will be firm and steadfast on the truth. So when the entire mujtahidun of a particular generation say a thing is like that, then there's no potential of error in that, and Allah knows best. The third way we would know that a verse or a hadith has been abrogated is that a companion, a sahabi, clearly states that the ruling was abrogated, such as with the hadith of Aisha al-Anha. So as long as the tradition to that companion is authentic, then we will accept it. And number four is when we notice a superficial contradiction between two textual evidences. We notice a superficial contradiction between two textual evidences, and the one evidence is earlier than the other. And the one evidence is earlier than the other. Now here, I just need to come in quickly and say that there's a 4-step process to dealing with contradiction in text, right? So the first approach would be would be to try and reconcile between the two texts, right? If reconciliation isn't possible, then we could either go on to Naskh now or Tarjih. Right? Naskh would be abrogation. Tarjih would be to argue that the one is more authentic than the other from whatever angle. Right? If you're dealing with a hadith The angle would either be the narrator of this hadith is a much more accurate narrator than the narrator of that hadith. Or you would argue numbers. The numbers of people that are narrating this hadith are much more than the people that are narrating that hadith over there. So the potential of error is lesser with this greater number and greater with that smaller number. And then finally, if that isn't possible, we would make tawakkuf. We would refrain from any commentary because we do not know the way out. And then we would wait basically until further evidence becomes available. Notice, however, I'm saying superficial contradiction. And the reason for that is that true contradiction between the textual evidences of Quran, it isn't possible. It isn't logically possible, right? And Allah indicates to us in the Quran when Allah says, لو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. Had the Quran being from a being other than Allah, they would have found in it much contradiction. Because the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ over a period of 23 years. If Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the author of the Quran, then over a 23-year period, what changes in his circumstances, he would have been a totally different person and he would have been saying totally different things. But the Quran coming from Allah, over a 23-year period, the message of the Quran does not change because it is from the same being and it is a being that does not change, and Allah knows best. I think we're going to stop here, inshallah. More detail we're going to continue with next week. I hope that the lesson benefited you and you have a better understanding of the sciences of the Quran, and this week particularly Naskh. Once again, as always, you are open to asking any questions. If there were questions that you had, and for some reason you didn't ask it, you can pass it on to one of the muallims or the muallimas, and they will pass it on to me. And then next week, inshallah, we can open the lesson with that. But the discussion on Naskh did not end. We are continuing with that next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, Maulana, all of the best. Jazakumullah. I need to give, what is it now, the hosting back to you, Maulana?
Yes.